She turned away in bed just as my hand grazed her shoulder, her voice barely audible beneath the hum of the ceiling fan. Maybe tomorrow, she said. The pause after that wasn't long. A soft buzz from her phone lit the darkened room, then another, and another. I stayed still. She didn't reach for it, not immediately. But I saw her glance, once, twice, her body tensing like a quiet reflex she didn't control. Her fingers hovered, then withdrew. The screen dimmed. Silence again. I didn't ask. I lay there, staring at the outline of her back, wondering if she realized how loud silence could be when paired with distance. We used to talk at night. Stupid things. What kind of house we'd retire in. Whether we'd ever take that trip to Maine in the fall. Now she turned away and whispered delays. The screen lit again. She didn't move, but her breathing had shifted, slower, deeper. Faked. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then rose quietly, stepped around the bed, and looked. The screen was dark again. Whatever message had come, it was gone now. Swiped away. Cleared. Still, I didn't touch it. I just looked at her. How peaceful she pretended to be. Her brows relaxed, lips slightly parted like a woman in calm sleep. A performance. Maybe for herself more than for me. I sat back down, careful not to wake her. I tried to close my eyes, but the buzzing lived behind my eyelids now. I heard it in phantom echoes, felt it crawl through the silence like static. Maybe tomorrow. She said it so gently. But I couldn't stop hearing what it replaced. Not now. Not tonight. Not you. By 3:17 a.m., I'd memorized the pattern of shadows on the ceiling. By 4:22, I'd stopped trying to sleep entirely. I listened instead, to her shifting slightly, the bed creaking once as she rolled toward the wall, the faintest breath of a sigh escaping her. I wondered who made her whisper, tomorrow, with regret. I wondered who made her phone buzz after midnight with such persistence. And more than anything, I wondered how long I'd been asleep while everything else had been happening wide awake. I didn't speak a word the next morning. Neither did she. But I noticed she plugged in her phone before coming to breakfast, and this time, she placed it face down. By late morning, she was humming again, something vaguely upbeat, vaguely old, like a commercial jingle from our college days. She wore a loose gray sweater that had always been mine until it became hers by quiet theft. She floated through the kitchen like someone unfazed, like someone whose night hadn't buzzed with secrets. She poured coffee, smiled without weight. Michelle finally dumped Brandon, she said out of nowhere. You remember from work? His new guy's name is Cal. Poor timing, huh? I looked up from the paper. Cal? She nodded too fast. Yeah. Real sweet guy. It's just messy, you know? Her tone was light, too casual for someone sharing gossip that specific. I searched my memory. Michelle, yes. I'd heard the name before. But Cal? No trace. She took a sip and laughed to herself, like she just remembered something that had nothing to do with me. Anyway, I might help her move this weekend. If she asks, she's kind of all over the place. She spoke like someone rehearsing lines she hadn't practiced enough. I gave a small nod, masking the noise behind my ribs. That's kind of you, I said. She leaned over, pressed a kiss on the top of my head like a woman patting a favorite pet, and said with syrup in her voice, You're sweet for not being clingy about my weekends. I watched her move to the sink, watched her body as if it were a new place I'd never been. The way she turned, the smile that lingered just a second too long, the ease that didn't quite reach her shoulders. I used to recognize her rhythms, the silent tells between words. Now everything felt like code. That afternoon, I drove to the pharmacy. I didn't need anything, I just needed to think somewhere else. Sitting in the car, I remembered a time when she would text me to ask what ice cream to bring home. When she'd call from the wine aisle and ask which bottle would go better with lasagna. Now she mentioned plans only after forming them. Dropped names like Cal mid-sentence as if they belonged in our shared life. And still, I hadn't said a thing. No accusations, no questions. But I'd started writing down names. The gathering was small, casual, the kind where no one brings enough chairs and everyone's balancing plates on their knees. It was one of those blended circles, half my friends, half hers, all pretending they hadn't already chosen sides in quiet. She floated through it like smoke, smiling, pouring wine, telling stories that made her laugh too hard. I stayed mostly in the background, nursing a drink, watching the way her smile lingered after people stopped laughing. Then it happened. Maya, one of those friends who always overspoke, tilted her glass and said across the group, So, are you and Cal still doing those long walks on lunch breaks? My spine straightened without effort. I kept my face neutral, a small sip halfway to my mouth. She blinked, then smiled. God, Maya, she said light and fast. I told you not to say that like we're a Hallmark movie. Her tone was playful, just the right shade of machinoid. It's not like that. He just talks a lot. It's fine. She didn't look at me, and I didn't ask. I nodded as if Maya's comment meant nothing, as if I hadn't already stored the name Cal in the back of my mind. It was a short name, easy to miss, easy to forget. But not when it slipped from two mouths in 1 week, not when it arrived paired with laughter and rehearsal. Later, while she chatted across the patio with old friends, I took a quiet breath and walked to the kitchen to refill my glass. Darren joined me at the sink, nudged me with a shoulder. You okay? I nodded once. Long day. He didn't press. We both knew that real friends ask without asking. When we left the party, she slipped her hand into mine like old times. I didn't resist, but I felt how hollow the gesture had become, like holding hands with a stranger who wore my wife's skin. I didn't start with suspicion. I started with attention. There's a difference. Suspicion rushes. Attention waits. Watches. Tallies. She'd always been open with her phone, left it charging in the kitchen, texts arriving without secrecy. Now it followed her everywhere. Into the bathroom. To the laundry room. Even just outside to water the plants she hadn't touched in months. The change wasn't loud. It was casual, almost forgettable, until you noticed the pattern. She began showering later than usual, long after I'd already said goodnight. And when I passed the bathroom door, I heard her laugh once, low and soft, followed by the faint sound of a voice note being played and quickly stopped. She started using focus mode on her phone. Said it helped her stay off screens, except she only enabled it on the shared tablet, not her personal device. That detail mattered. The kind of detail you don't notice unless you've trained your mind to catalog quiet changes. She wasn't sloppy, at least not yet, but she'd forgotten something. The quieter she got, the louder the patterns became. So I watched. Not with cameras, not with spyware, just with time. I noted the new passwords on shared logins, the sudden deletion of browser history, something she used to laugh at as paranoid. I watched her type on her phone while angled away, always vertical screen, one thumb typing. That mattered too. One night, while pretending to sleep, I listened as she slipped out of bed at 2:13 a.m. She moved softly, but not invisibly. I heard the creak of the hallway floor, the rustle of her robe pocket where the phone always lived now. She returned 20 minutes later, cooler to the touch, breathing even. No explanation, no contradiction. Because deception takes effort. But omission? Omission wears a smile. I didn't confront. I didn't accuse. I made coffee in the morning, kissed her temple out of habit, and smiled as if I hadn't started counting shadows on the walls. By then I'd learned, the truth doesn't panic when delayed. It just grows teeth. The next evening, she made lasagna, from scratch. She hadn't cooked in weeks, months maybe. Not without a reason. And certainly not with that smile, the one that strained just slightly at the corners, like it had been practiced in the mirror a few times before making its way to me. She poured wine, lit a candle, played the old jazz playlists we used to default to before things became quiet between us. Thought we could use a night in, she said brightly. No phones, no distractions. I watched her move, the apron tied too neatly, the way she brushed imaginary crumbs off the counter, the way her eyes flicked to mine a second too long, like she was trying to gauge if I'd bought it. I miss doing this, she added, tone light but placed, not genuine, intentional. I nodded slowly, chewing deliberately. Tastes good, I said. She beamed too wide. After dinner, she leaned in, rested her head on my shoulder on the couch like she used to. Her fingers traced circles on my hand. It would have felt like reconnection, if her touch hadn't felt like performance, if her eyes hadn't been scanning the room like she was reviewing a scene. Then came the pet name. Babe, she said with a playful nudge. I hadn't heard that one from her in nearly a year. Remember that trip to Monterey? When the heater broke in the hotel? I nodded, cautious. She laughed softly. We were freezing. You tried to warm me up with your... She hesitated. Your hoodie. That old Cal Bears one. My stomach went still. She blinked. Realized. Too late. That hoodie never belonged to me. She caught it, tried to pivot, forced another laugh. Wait, no. I meant your navy one. Sorry, long day. I smiled faintly, said nothing. Because I knew she hadn't had a long day. I'd been tracking her schedule for a week. She'd left work early. No meetings, no emails after noon. She was remembering someone else's hoodie, someone else's Monterey. And in that moment I realized her affection wasn't spontaneous. It was tactical. A campaign to re-establish trust, without truth. She went to bed early, claiming a headache. I stayed on the couch, listening to the playlist loop again. Maybe tomorrow, she had whispered 2 nights ago. But tonight she said everything without saying anything at all. I wasn't looking for her. It started when I opened a link to a charity event someone from my office had posted. I clicked out of politeness, scrolling through clumsy group photos, forced smiles, too much overhead lighting. And then I saw her. Not front and center. Not posed. In the background of a wide shot, shoulder turned, laughing with someone off frame. Her sweater unmistakable. Her posture familiar in a way that hits like instinct, not logic. She told me she was at a professional development workshop that weekend. Boring, she'd said with a yawn. Mandatory stuff. I'll be wiped. But the caption under the image didn't mention workshops. It read, "Reuniting feels good. Such a great night with this crew." And then I saw the names tagged. Not her. She wasn't tagged. But Michelle was. And Cal. There it was again. That short, easy name slipping into visibility without effort. The kind of name that could belong to anyone, until it belonged to something else entirely. I stared at the photo longer than I meant to. Her posture wasn't stiff like it had been around me lately. She was leaning in, head tilted, mid-laugh, loose in a way I hadn't seen in months. She hadn't looked that relaxed around me since last spring. I didn't call her out. I didn't forward the photo. Instead, I saved it. Then I checked her location sharing. Still active, though rarely useful lately. She turned off precise location recently, claiming it drained battery. A half-truth at best. I did something then I hadn't done before. I pulled up our calendar history, shared appointments, social plans, anything with a paper trail. The workshop wasn't on it. Neither was the charity event. But the gym appointment she used to get out of dinner with my brother was logged perfectly, right down to a fake confirmation she'd shown me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was aligning timelines, testing stories, setting baselines, because once you spot the first deception, the rest don't hide. They scatter. And I'd already started collecting them in a file she didn't know existed. She brought it up casually, in the way people mention something innocuous before sliding in something that isn't. We were folding laundry in the living room, something we rarely did together anymore, when she asked, "Have you updated the will lately?" I glanced at her, folding a towel. "Not since last year." "Why?" She shrugged, too breezy. "Just wondering. Things change. Life moves. Might be good to revisit it, make sure everything's still relevant." Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharper than they needed to be. I waited. "And," she continued, folding a pair of my jeans like they weren't just fabric but a prop, "I was thinking we could restructure some of the accounts, just for flexibility, in case anything comes up." There it was, that careful vagueness again. Flexibility. I nodded, let it land with no reaction. "Sure, I'll look into it." She smiled, satisfied. But she didn't ask what I meant by "look into it." She just moved on to the next piece of laundry like a woman checking boxes on a mental script. Later that night, after she went to bed early again, headache again, I opened my secure file and began noting down questions she hadn't asked before this month. Account passwords, beneficiaries, legal phrases she used to ignore that now seemed to interest her. The next day, I walked into HR during lunch. I didn't explain much, just filled out a form quietly, professionally. I removed her as my emergency contact, replaced her with my brother. No fanfare. No anger. Then I checked the beneficiary on my life insurance and moved the primary designation to my sister. Temporarily, I told myself. Later that evening, she mentioned refinancing. Casual. Curious. She said she wanted to learn more about our equity. I smiled, said I'd pull some paperwork. What I didn't say was that I'd already opened a private bank account under my name alone. Already transferred a controlled portion of our liquid assets into it. Nothing alarming, but enough. I wasn't planning a confrontation. Not yet. I was preparing distance. The kind that isn't about leaving quickly, but about leaving cleanly. It started with silence. Lena, Her old college roommate, someone I used to joke was my second wife, for how often she texted us both, stopped responding to me altogether. Birthday messages. Inside jokes. Even a photo I sent of her favorite old wine bottle, no reply. I didn't push. Silence, when it comes from someone vocal, is always loaded. Then there was Alan. Mutual friend. Dinner guest. The kind of guy who always played mediator whenever things in the group got tense. We ran into each other at the market, too awkward to avoid. He gave a smile. Forced. Shifted in place. Then, too quickly, said, "Hey, I heard you and Em are on a break. Just wanted to say, I hope it's amicable. No judgment, man." I paused, blinking. "A break?" He nodded, almost apologetic. "Yeah, she said it was mutual. Just space. Said you were both figuring things out privately." It hit like a slap made of fog, not painful, just disorienting. I kept my face calm. "Ah, right." He seemed to relax, misreading my restraint. "You're handling it well. Just take care of yourself, okay?" I left the store with milk, eggs, and a split down the center of my social world. In the car, I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I just sat there and breathed, once through my nose, once through my teeth. She wasn't just misrepresenting the truth, she was actively laying groundwork, preemptive narratives, building the idea that we were already split so that anything she did now was above board. And if I confronted her now, she'd smile and say, "Oh, come on, I just meant we were giving each other space." Language built for evasion. Later that evening, she brought me tea, sat next to me on the couch, called me darling, a word she hadn't used in years. I watched her fingers brush against mine and thought of Lena's silence, of Alan's awkward concern. I knew then what she was doing wasn't just personal. It was tactical, and I wasn't going to stop her. Not yet. I was going to let her build her version of the story, then dismantle it with the truth. She left Friday morning with a duffel bag and a smile. "Spa weekend," she said, kissing my cheek like habit, like muscle memory, like nothing had rotted between us. "Michelle and I are overdue." I nodded, still in the doorway, coffee in hand. She didn't ask if I had plans. She didn't ask if I'd miss her. She didn't notice I hadn't asked who booked the spa. By noon, the movers had come. Not the kind that haul everything, just the kind that specialize in furnished corporate rentals. No labels, no noise, just quiet men who understood discretion and moved as if they'd done this before for others like me. By 2 I was gone. The apartment I'd signed a short-term lease on was clean, sterile, temporary, exactly what I needed. A place where nothing reminded me of her voice calling from the other room. No scent of her shampoo seeping from shared towels. No echoes of her lies vibrating in the walls. Before I left the house, I'd done 3 things. First, I changed the garage code. Then, I gathered every photo of us on display, framed memories that used to mean something. I chose one. The one from Big Sur, the trip she swore was her favorite. We were laughing in it, both windblown, both younger. I placed it face down on the kitchen table, right where she'd see it when she walked in. Then I wrote the note. Nothing long. Just 12 words. "Buzz all you want. There's no signal now." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. I left my keys on the counter. Took one last look at the home we'd built, more hers now than mine, filled with choices she made when I stopped matching, and stepped out without looking back. The phone vibrated once around midnight, then again, and again. I didn't open any of them. Somewhere across the city, she was likely scrolling through a quiet house, trying to trace what didn't feel real yet. But by the time she noticed what was missing, I was already gone. Not just from the house, from the version of myself who waited for maybe. By Saturday night she'd started posting. Not directly, of course, never that simple. Just cryptic messages wrapped in aesthetic filters, a half-empty wine glass, a dim-lit corner of the house, a quote overlaid in cursive. "Sometimes silence is the loudest cruelty." Then another, the next morning. She couldn't have known he'd overreact. No names. No details. Just enough for her circle to ask, "You okay?" Just enough to frame herself as the one left behind, misunderstood, hurt. I didn't answer any messages. Not the mutuals who reached out cautiously, not the long-lost friend who texted, "Is everything okay between you two?" They'd find out soon enough. On Monday, HR at her company received a packet. No return address. Inside were itemized receipts from a corporate card tied to her department. Not stolen. Just misused. Spa treatments, travel expenses labeled client relations, dinners listed as mentor meetings, that coincided with the event photos she never meant me to see. There was also a printout of a social post, her, partially visible behind Cal, drink in hand, one of the background shots, annotated quietly in pen. March 9th, non-work event. I didn't get confirmation of what happened next. I didn't need it. What I heard, through a quiet source, was that Cal's desk was cleared out by Wednesday, and that she'd been invited to reevaluate her boundaries with expense accounts. She tried to call that night. I let it ring. Then the emails started, short, pleading, circular. One just said, "Please don't do this." Another, "This isn't who we are." But I'd already removed her access to our shared drives, accounts, even the backup storage we kept for emergencies. I'd changed every recovery email, every security question. She had nothing left that belonged to us. And still, she posted, "It's wild how fast someone can forget what you survived together." But I hadn't forgotten. I just stopped pretending it was worth surviving for. She must have thought silence would stay contained, that I'd vanish neatly, that friends would eventually drift back to her side, sympathetic to the woman left behind, that she could shape the narrative with subtweets and shadowed quotes. But the thing about echo chambers is this: eventually they crack. Her parents heard first, from a cousin, of all people. Someone who'd seen the social photos and asked about the new guy. When the timeline didn't line up, they called me. I didn't embellish. I didn't rant. I just sent them 3 screenshots: her message about the break, the event photo with Cal, and her calendar entry for the fake workshop. Then I left it alone. 3 days later, I got a polite reply. Short, formal. Her father's tone was cold even in text. "Thank you for the clarity. We were misinformed." I knew what that meant. The quiet kind of financial leash being pulled back. After that, the silence started spreading, not mine, hers. Mutual friends stopped liking her posts. One by one, they disappeared from her comments. A few even reached out to me privately, not to gossip, but to say they were sorry they hadn't seen it sooner. I didn't ask them to pick sides. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't ask for loyalty. It earns it. I never said a word publicly. Never replied to her story that said, "People show their true colors when they think you're not watching." Because mine didn't need showing. I'd been the one quietly watching all along. The last I heard, she was still in the house. Alone. The kitchen probably still had my note. The framed photo still face down. Every drawer a quiet reminder of what she tried to maintain after the foundation cracked. She posted one final quote before going silent. "Sometimes silence is the only answer you get, and deserve." I didn't like it. Didn't share it. But I agreed.